How y'all doing?
Good.
Good.
Hoorah.
Getting nicer out there, huh?
Yeah.
Looks like next week, not this coming week, but the next week is when we're gorgeous.
Oh, is that right?
All 70s, I think.
Wow. Damn, we're there.
I'm sure.
We're there.
I feel bad for my college son is coming home this week. Like, they never got nice weather this spring to all hang out outside and do all their outside stuff.
We had some rain yesterday, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah.
President called me.
Okay. The image is frozen at their end. It is not our issue, and the volume is fine. The sound is fine.
I don't see any image issues on our end, so.
Is this what we're using today, Pastor?
What's it say?
Student? The first sign?
Yep, that's it.
My pencil. Oh, you have the pencil.
I forgot my Bible and I forgot my glasses.
No, I can help you with the Bible. Can't help you with the glasses.
I bet extra pair of readers.
No, I'm good.
Typical Marine, yeah. I know. Yeah.
You don't need to see.
There's nothing typical about my.
Yeah, man. Out there.
Oh, donut. And cookies. My goodness. And they're all for me.
Oh, that's a lot of temptation right there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you found some good books for your grandkids?
Yeah, I got the Aesop's Fables and the fairy tales.
Oh,
There's
nice.
one from the 9-year-old, I got the Aesop's Fables. Because I can remember that from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
That's
I
old.
bought it for my kids when they were young.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh,
this is the
I remember those.
generation.
cool. Good, very good. And those books are great. They'll last forever.
Yeah, they're like, kind of, like,
Yeah.
There's Matt.
silver blend.
Yep.
What page?
You indicate to start. So,
Good stuff.
So it's confirmation day, Pastor?
That's what takes on me.
I signed up for
Are you
the
gonna show
scout
up then?
presenter, and I didn't realize it was confirmation.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
Those unusual services, you know, they throw me for a loop.
Thanks, Penny.
Mentally and emotionally,
You
okay,
should
maybe
be.
just emotionally.
Yeah.
Am I gonna get through this?
You'll be fine.
Your confidence in me is stabilizing.
The kids need to be confident in you because they're gonna be reading slides over. So,
You're gonna, oh, okay. You're moving it?
oh, he's mad at me.
Sounded like the kids that.
Michael's mad at me. Because he was running late, and so I didn't let him ring the bell.
Hopefully he's moving it though with his.
I said, it's already 8:01, I was like, we're starting, so he was mad at me.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Kristen, put your clicker in the altar.
Yeah, that's right. Not a big deal.
Good sermon though.
Thanks.
Pastor, are you gonna be moving the?
Chairman. Yeah, so,
Did you find your clicker?
it was on the altar next to the books, it was hidden. So that's why I didn't see it. It wasn't where I usually see it, so. But Scott was up there and he had the outline, so he knew exactly where I was going.
Is there an outline, Pastor?
Yeah, there's a sign-in sheet too.
Is there a pencil or a pen?
There's pencils, there's Bibles, there's donuts, there's coffee. Well, there's something black and hot. I don't know if it's coffee or not.
It was coffee at one time.
It was coffee yesterday, and it wasn't that good then either.
Okay, so that's new, huh? Because I'm like, different sign.
We used to do it. We used to have you sign in, but I got all this done the week before Easter. So it's been sitting on my desk, and I thought, if I'm not here, then I tell you. It's all right. pre-record a couple sermons, just in case.
I'm thinking of what is going in.
It was nice to see Pastor Kenny.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Good.
You look great.
Pastor, I'm told the key is to eat garlic.
Antisocial, yes.
Why weren't
Keeps
you here
healthy.
last week?
Look, keeps the vampires away.
Oh.
Benefit.
Okay. Pastor, did you have COVID?
They tested positive for you.
That's a key.
You didn't have any symptoms?
Oh, yeah, I'm sick.
She usually comes in the kitchen.
Doctor said, yeah, it's street symptoms. I figured the doctor's not worried about it. I guess I'm not worried about it either then.
You got over it pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
too, but-
Now it's just allergies. There's something in the air. Get this postnasal drip going. With the tree pollen. A lot of trees out there.
Blake's teacher at school came down with it, and we were talking, and I'm hearing that, you know, how in the very beginning you could tell because you couldn't smell? Allegedly, that's not there anymore.
I didn't know, it was cold. I had a cold. But people got a little nervous, so did what I had to do. Yeah, sorry. Dr. Fauci said I'm okay, so
Oh, and you are better than
must
gold.
be good.
You're gonna live.
I think they could still be up drinking coffee and eating donuts.
Well, they can do that here too.
Or they probably,
The book club, that's where they're.
coffee's better upstairs there.
Yeah, well, this is
It's
day
long
older.
up there, I got the last part.
Ah, yeah. This is from yesterday, it's just I heated it up. Leading worship, now I can lead a Bible study. I'm thankful that you give me the opportunity, as well as Blessing, who wrote the lesson for us today on John's Gospel, and how Jesus changes water to wine and all the things that are there for us. So bless us with your Spirit and open our hearts and minds. In Jesus' name, amen. As John calls them in his Gospel. John's Gospel is a little different than the other three. So he only gives us 7 signs. And that does not include the drinking water and Jesus rising from the dead. That can technically be a sign as well. But these are basically said to be signs. Okay, and this went along apparently the sermon kit. It came with the sermon kit, but it didn't really match up with the sermons and that we went through in the Lenten season in the midweeks. But I wanted to give you an outline of John's Gospel because all the sermons came from John's Gospel and the characters in John's Gospel. But the signs then help us to see why of his passion, death, and resurrection. John's Gospel outline quite God and us. But then from John 1 to John 12, you have Jesus' revelation to Israel, which is in public, okay? And then from John 13 to John 17, Jesus goes off with his disciples, and that's in private. That starts with the upper room, the washing of the feet, and ends with Gethsemane. So that's redemption of the world. And the epilogue is John 21, which again is the bookend. So the prologue and the epilogue telling us why all this is given to us by John, the way he gives it to us. The 7 signs take us on a journey that begins in Cana of Galilee with a wedding and ends with the resurrection of Lazarus. That's the 7th sign. But with this study, we'll have to pick it up in the fall. Throughout this trip, through these 7 signs, we see incredible events of water turned to wine, a sick boy restored, a lame man brought to his feet, thousands fed, a storm silenced, a blind man gaining sight, and a dead man coming forth from his tomb. So basically everything. It runs the gamut. So the 7 signs in the Gospel of John are changing water into wine, which we'll cover today. John 4, the healing of the royal official's son. John 5, healing of the paralyzed man. John 6, which is the feeding of the 5,000, but that's just verses 5 through 14. John 6 also includes walking on water in 16 to 21, and then the rest of that chapter is a discourse or a sermon teaching. John 9, healing the man born blind, and John 11, raising Lazarus from the dead. All right. Individually, each sign points to Christ's identity, that he is God incarnate, or God with flesh on. Collectively, the signs prove that Jesus is the Son of God, who wields all power in heaven and on earth. Progressively, the signs move forward in intensity and end with a great crescendo, from water and wine to Christ's defeat of death. The Greek word for sign is semeion, and then in Latin, signum, and it means an identifying mark. Think X marks the spot, or proof. From signum, we get our English words signal, insignia, and signature. John tells us why he records these signs in John 20. Now, Jesus did many other signs in the presence. John's account of the signs is selective. He mentions that Jesus did many other signs. The 7 specific signs were included. Christ, the Messiah, and the Son of God. And this belief leads to life. Another important idea in John's Gospel, the word life is mentioned 53 times in 21 chapters. So quite a bit. All right, so let's look at the text first, which is John 2, 1 through 11. Verses 1 through 5 first. Gary is going to read that for us online.
I am struggling to find it. Just a minute, 1 through 5. Okay,
Yep.
got it. And the 3rd day there was a marriage in Cana, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus saith unto him, They have no wine. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. That's 1 through 5.
That's 1 through 5 in the King James. So there you go. Excellent. The King's English. Robin, read for us 6
That's
through
Carol's Bible, yeah, we're using, right?
6 through 11. Robin.
Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, Fill the jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. And the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, Everyone serves the good wine first. When people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. This, the first of the signs Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him.
Very good. Thank you. So even we get that at the end, why these signs are given. Okay. And that means there is, brace yourself, some assembly required. Make sure that A connects to B, bolting C into D and sliding E over to F. Life comes in pieces, doesn't it? A million pieces that need to be put together. And A doesn't always connect with B. C doesn't always bolt into D. And sliding E over to F is often impossible. Peck famously began his book, The Road Less Traveled, with these words: Life is difficult. No kidding. His premise is that the sooner we embrace that fact, the better off we will be. Conversely, if we refuse to accept that life is difficult, we'll find ourselves frequently irritated, blaming others, feeling useless, and being unhappy most of the time. Is there a better way? You bet there is. Give the problem to Jesus. That's what Mary, his mother, does here. There was a problem, Mary gives it to Jesus. So this is, as we begin this, to remind ourselves that if you think that I became a Christian so life must get easier, you're going to be sadly disappointed. It actually doesn't get much easier. In fact, it might even get a little bit harder, considering how God expects us to live and what he calls us to do and gives us the power to do. It can be very difficult. So there's some questions here. Do you remember how John began the gospel, his gospel? In the beginning, which means what?
Before creation.
All right, so yeah, he's basically writing a new creation story. Genesis starts with what words? In the beginning. Okay, so the beginning of the Bible starts with in the beginning. What a the earth. But that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay? In fact, he even starts before creation begins and says that Jesus was always there, or the Word was always there. And so John appears to be writing a new creation story, and he is. The 7 days of creation correspond to Christ's 7 signs. All right. Which is of God's new creation, where there is beauty, healing, abundance, resurrection, and life. So let's unpack the first sign Jesus performs. As you see in verse 3, what's the problem?
Ran out of wine.
All right. So what's the problem?
The party's gonna end.
What's the problem? Unpack that, though. Let's unpack this. What is the problem?
They run out of wine, it's a major social faux pas.
Okay. It's a major social faux pas. And Robin even says, that they underestimated. They did not anticipate this many people coming. Okay. They didn't plan properly. If they had, they wouldn't have run out of wine, is the assumption. Okay. But maybe they just underestimate the size of the crowd. Or maybe they underestimated the thirst of the guests. Or they didn't know Jesus was going to bring so many friends. It was just, Mary plus one. And Jesus ends up bringing them.
Yeah, the 12.
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's all the 12. It just says his disciples, but it could be all 12. Who knows? But, it's more than one, right?
Well, he always had more than just the 12.
Right. There was a large group of people.
Yeah.
But we're going to assume that it was just these guys. I mean, John 1 goes into details about how Jesus calls Peter, Andrew, James, and John, those four, and then Philip and Nathaniel, 5 and 6. So there were at least 6, probably no more than 12. But we got the first 6 that are called. Matthew probably hasn't been called just yet. That we know that comes a little bit later too. But we don't know, because John doesn't give us his gospel in chronological order. Regardless of what caused this problem, the wedding, as we say, is going downhill fast. Without wine, everything's going to shut down. Century Palestine, these social customs were so serious that lawsuits could be filed against people who ran out of food and wine. Does that sound familiar? Imagine going to a wedding. I was invited to this wedding. I didn't get enough to eat, so I'm going to sue the wedding couple. Wow. Sure does sound like 21st century America, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think that's just one more indication that you think things are bad now. They've always been this bad. Crying out loud, yeah. History didn't begin the day you were born. So a lot of people think that, but no, things happened before you were born. What have you run out of lately? Is it ideas? Is it patience? Wine. Buy a new house. Yeah, you don't run out of wine too fast. We got a lot of it, believe me. We're ready for socializing this summer. But don't we run out of things? What are some of the things we run out of?
I think people are gonna be running out of a lot of things pretty soon.
Money for gas.
Yeah, resources. I think a lot of people have already run out of patience.
I was just gonna say that.
It's like, come on, wake up. You said you were gonna do something, it's time to do it. How about a parent? As a parent, don't you think you've probably run out of all three? Ideas, patience, and cash? Yeah, that's part of being a parent too. Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe you ran out of love. Maybe it's your job. You've run out of enthusiasm and joy. Is going to work a drudgery, whatever it is? Yeah, that's a problem too. And I think that we've gotten to a point in our society that a lot of people have realized, hey, I should be happy with what I'm doing. And if I don't, then I gotta do something else. And then it's trying to find that. Then you're gonna have to be patient, right? Sometimes you don't get to do what you want right away, but it's always good to work towards that. There's nothing wrong with that. We can run out of enthusiasm. We can run out of joy in this life. So what did Mary do when they ran out of wine?
That's the bunch.
She went to option B.
She passed the buck. That's not what my book says. Not quite.
She went where she knew she could find a.
Yeah, I think that's probably
Yeah.
more accurate. Yeah, she wasn't bossy. She didn't tell Jesus, go down to the store, It's going to be, it's up to me. And Mary wasn't critical. She didn't say if only they had planned better. People just don't think ahead these days. What's the world coming to? And she also didn't blame Jesus, if you think about it. Jesus, what kind of Messiah are you anyway? If you're really in control, this would have never have happened. She also didn't say it was her fault. Jesus, it's all my fault. I failed as a friend. Now the wedding is ruined. The marriage will collapse and I'm to blame. No, all she did was give the problem to Jesus. She knew who to turn to. How could she know? How could Mary know that Jesus was the person to go to?
She needed a miracle.
Because Gabriel told her.
Why to go to Jesus then?
Well,
She
she
knew it.
Gabriel told her
he was the
that.
Son of God.
Yeah, I mean, she had no other option.
She was kind of there at the beginning, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she kind of knew who Jesus was. The person to meet Jesus, when you think about it. She's the first person to know who Jesus is. She's the first person to confess that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. She knew. And so she knew where to go when things went off kilter, like here. Now, that might, cause us to question, this is what you go to Jesus for? Because there's no wine. Certainly there's got to be some, shouldn't you go to Jesus to get rid of the Romans? Isn't that the bigger issue here? In the greater scheme of things, this doesn't seem to be all that big of a deal. And so what? They ran out of wine. Not everybody drinks anyway, right?
At that moment in time, it was a big deal.
But really, was it? Was it really?
Not in the scheme of.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, yeah, I think. What I'm getting at, though.
I see what you're getting at, but maybe she realized that Jesus wasn't here to do that.
Yeah. There's no getting rid of Rome.
Right.
Even Jesus can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, he could.
Just the big things.
Well, that's true too, and I think that's an important aspect of this. Bring even the little stuff to God, right? That's good. But I think too that in the greater scheme of things, Mary is just dealing with what's right in front of her. Isn't that a good lesson? We can't do anything about what's happening in the United States, but we can take care of what's happening right in front of us. I've said it before. And of course, we haven't heard that we're going into a recession, so we must not be, right? But, you know, if they say we're gonna have a recession, just don't participate. You know?
Yeah, right.
You don't have to participate in it. You know, change your life. You know, you control what you can control. And Mary maybe is telling us, this is what I can control. I just bring it to Jesus. Okay, so let's do it. All right?
This is a little ahead, but you already had his disciples, he'd already been baptized at this time.
Yeah, that was the previous chapter. Even though John in his gospel tells us that Jesus was baptized, but he records it as John the Baptist told me about this, right? Yeah, Jesus is there. This is actually probably after the temptation as well. So this is beyond. So we're about at least, a month and a half after the baptism. That he had to go out on the, to the fishermen out in the water, because he had called them and then he left, and now he's back and he's got to get them out of the boats again. And so that's why they're up in Cana and Galilee. That's where actually Philip is from, I believe. No, Philip is from Bethsaida, where Andrew and Peter are from, and so, but they're in that area. That's the same area. Cana is the same place. So the question is, why give the problem to Jesus? We asked that, answered that, because he can do it. He can handle it. He can solve it. Jesus has taken care of our biggest problem, sin, death, and hell. Seeing how Jesus has conquered our biggest problem empowers us to give him all our problems. But there is the warning. Interpreting Christ's miracle at Cana in Galilee is a lot like putting IKEA furniture together. There is, now brace yourselves, some assembly required. So let's unpack this a little bit. When does this happen? There is an indicator of when this happens. The third raise it up. There's something about this wedding that points to the Savior's resurrection, new creation, and new beginnings. So the indicator there, the time signature of the third day is significant.
I mean, it makes no sense.
Unless you read the rest of the gospel. But
On the third day. On the third day from what, or why? So there must be symbolism or something.
Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, it's not, because John's gospel is not a chronological history of Jesus' ministry, but you have these indicators. In John 1, you got the testimony of John the Baptist, and then there's the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And now we're on the third day.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
It is.
But he's using this, it probably is literal, yes, but it's also a symbolic. There's a reason for this. And in this chapter, you have twice. Third day, and then destroy this temple in 3 days, I will rebuild it. So there's two of these in this chapter alone. So there's a theological issue going on here as well. That this is about new beginnings. It's about resurrection. It's about Mary only appearing in John's gospel twice. That's Mary, the mother of Jesus. She's here in John 2. Where's the second one, you think? At the cross. And then Mary disappears after this. Doesn't have a role to play in John. Jesus addresses her not as mother, but as woman. Yeah. So John 2:4 and John 19:26, Jesus refers to his mother as woman. Now this is an honorific. This is not something that's a negative. It's a way of saying great respect. Not just, hey ma. You know, that's why, he uses that term, woman. That's the idea there.
Pastor?
Yes?
What always confuses me about and she just says to the servants, do what he says. Could you explain that?
I will, but I'm at letter B and that's letter C. Which you don't have, see?
Okay.
But you're anticipating good, that's good because that is addressed as well. But there's something else here too. Mary's shows up in two places, here at the wedding at Cana and at the cross. Guess what else is in both of those stories, besides Mary and Jesus? And water. Water is the point here. There's water here, and then there's the water and blood flowing out of Jesus' side at the cross. So water becomes one of the major themes of John's gospel. Okay, it's here in John 2. It's in John 3. You must with the woman at the well of Samaria. Rivers, streams of living water coming out of them. Okay, so that's also an important aspect of John's gospel.
It's in John 1 too.
Yeah, I mean, water's everywhere. And guess what Genesis 1 has also? Water. It starts with water. The Spirit of God hovering over the waters of the earth. So, all connected. Now, as Karen mentioned, there's an hour. There's a time signature, another time signature. Throughout John's gospel, the word hour has not yet come. Now, there's no indication that that's what he's talking about here, but if you get to John 7, verse 30, John 8, verse 20, John 12, verse 23, John 13, 1, and John 17, 1, you do. My hour has come, you know. The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. It is the death of Jesus. That's what that hour means. And it's 60 minutes, it's an hour, it's a time. My time has come. And yet, this in here, he's saying, we're not there yet. Okay? So, Jesus is not going to die and rise again to save this wedding feast, is one way to look at this. Which is why then Mary says, whatever he says, go ahead and do it, because I certainly don't know what he's going to do. But I don't have to know. Okay, 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification in verse 6. Yeah.
Excuse me. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. Why did he say that? Why did he say that?
Because he's making the connection to his death and resurrection.
Why?
Because that's what this is all about. All of this is given to us so that we understand what Jesus was doing when he died on the cross.
All the signs.
Yeah, everything. Everything in John's gospel is pointing us to the death of Jesus. And so Jesus is in because what we're doing is it's a completely, this is like, remember in John, in Revelation about the scrolls, John is unraveling a scroll of Jesus' life and his gospel. And right now we're at the beginning. There's a lot more rolled up into it. And so we have to patiently and methodically that would know it would be Mary because she was there from the very beginning. But she doesn't even know yet. So she's just saying, whatever he says, go ahead and do it. Okay. So that's why Jesus says that. My hour has not yet come, but it will, is the implication. It's just not here yet.
He wasn't ready to turn the water into wine.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. I mean, he's going to do that now. But that does a sign first, and then I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to do another sign, and all these signs are going to build and build and build until we get to the 7th sign, which is the raising of Lazarus from the dead. And remember where that happens in the timeline, right before Jesus' own death and resurrection. He conquers death, and then he conquers death again.
And Pastor, there's something about when John wrote this gospel, wasn't it like in the 90s?
Yeah, it's much later.
And
Yeah.
what was the purpose at that time to write it then? Were people falling away from the church?
No, we're already then into the 3rd and 4th generation. I think that's part of it. I
okay.
think what's happening is John is probably the last of the eyewitnesses. And so he needs to give, the Holy Spirit is giving John's gospel to build on what Matthew, Mark, and Luke had done. But when Matthew, Mark, and Luke wrote, there were still people around that had firsthand experience of Jesus. By the time we get to John's gospel, no one's around anymore. John is probably the last. When he died, that was the end of the apostolic era. That's usually the way that's referenced.
Okay.
All right.
So is Jesus kind of saying, you know, I'm here to die on the cross?
Yep.
That's why I'm here.
Yep.
And
He's even going to talk about that because he goes down to Jerusalem and cleanses the temple in the next section.
So he's saying, okay, what does this have to do with me? Like, I don't know, I'm still a little confused.
Yeah, what does this have to do with me? He's basically asking the question that he wants them to ask. To ask, didn't they? You know, they were leading. You think back to your most favorite
He answered
professors.
a question with a question.
Well, no, only God does really that. But that's how you know you're dealing with God, because He answers questions with questions. But the best professors teach in that they lead you to ask the questions that they want you to ask. The best questions. That's the way it was for me, especially in seminary, but also in college. The professors I remember best: Maschke, Nagel, Robert, Schmelder, Rossau, those, you know, and Feuerhahn to a lesser extent. And unfortunately, most of them are already sainted. I wish you had the opportunity, but they always led me to ask the questions, and I could see the twinkle in their eyes. It's because they knew that's the question to ask. That was the right question. So, I kind of felt good about that. I was asking the right questions. You know, and so they were, and Jesus is leading them to ask the right questions. Not that could anything be done, but what does this have to do with why I came? That's the question. Now, did they get it? Oh, who knows? I don't know. Stone jars were preferable to ceramic jars, because a ceramic pot came in contact with unclean person or substance. Moses directed that ceramic pot needs to be destroyed. Leviticus 6, Leviticus 11, Leviticus 15. But if you made the jar out of stone, you didn't have to destroy it. It could be purified again, I guess. I don't know. That's just the way it is. But how many we got? 5 is less than perfection. What's the number of perfection? 7, right? So what's the mark of the beast?
666.
Usually we note it as 666, although you can make a case that it's 660, but that's okay. So what's up with 6 here? Changing water into wine from 6 stone water jars indicates the imperfect Old Testament washings are being replaced by a better, greater, and absolute perfect washing. Oh, well, that makes sense then, doesn't it? And how are you supposed to know that?
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's why you read your Old Testament. You ever read the book of Leviticus all the way through? It's not easy, is
Yes.
it? Yeah, and it's not easy, is it? You know, to read through that Old Testament. Usually people reading it starting from Genesis get bogged down right around Numbers or Leviticus. So, that's why there was this golden or the scarlet thread through all of it. And that's when you get these guys writing these Bible stories. They're not pastors of the parish. They don't have anything else to do but catch all this stuff. You know, they don't have all the other stuff that go along with pastoral ministry. So they have that time. I don't have that luxury, I guess. So maybe that's what sabbaticals are for. Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, according to verse 11. in the ESV, manifested his glory. The Eugene Peterson's The Message, his translation says that this act in Cana of Galilee was the first sign Jesus gave, the first glimpse of his glory. The word manifest it's much more, but the Greek word is really where we get the word epiphany from, which is why this text usually shows up in January, the beginning of the Epiphany season. So, because these are manifestations, these are how Jesus shows us who he is. And so that's how we know, and that's why we're supposed to know that we're supposed to unpack this, that this isn't just a miracle where Jesus wanted to make some good wine. There's something else going on here. Okay. Jesus created the equivalent 6 stone water jars of wine. This is the equivalent of 908 bottles of wine. That's a lot of wine. Water, though, became an abundant Merlot, apparently. But this glory points us forward. It's not about the wine. It's about the cross. And throughout John's gospel, Christ's supreme and ultimate glory is his rejection, suffering, and death on Good Friday. John 12, John 17. All right, so let's put the pieces together. B, the hour is C, and E is glory. All three take us to the cross. A, which is on the third day, connects us to the empty tomb. And the crowning piece, the piece that connects it all together, is D, which is the 6 stone jars for washing. That's the A, B, C, and D. Okay? So B is Mary, C is the hour, E is the glory. A is the third day, and then D is the 6 stone jars for washing. And when you put all of those together, Mary, his mother, the hour, the glory, the third day, and the 6 stone jars of washing, what do we have? Through Christ's death and resurrection, we are all washed of all sin. Jesus cleanses completely, and by faith alone, we stand blameless before the throne of God. Life's greatest problem, sin, and with it death and hell, are conquered. This is an awesome gift of grace. I don't know if you want to diagram that out, it might be a little easier to, B plus C plus E, and multiply it by A, and you get D. So, concluding there, don't take your problems out on others. Temper tantrums never advance the cause. Okay? Don't take your problems to the bar. Jim Beam can't solve them. The moment you sense a problem, however large or small, give it to Jesus. I can hear you saying, but if I get problems, wine runs out. Life is difficult. These are the facts of life. But here is another fact of life. Jesus says, give your problems to me. State them simply, present them daily, and trust me completely. Works every single time it's tried, by the way. If you don't believe me, not much I can do for you. You're just gonna have, it's one of those things, as Captain Kirk once told Spock, we learn by doing. You didn't know that? It's in the search for the voyage home. We learn by doing. All right, that's the first sign. Fun. All right, so next time, which is next week, God willing, we're going to move over to John 4. In John 4, and it starts in verse 46, actually. It's after the woman at Samaria, because there's really no miracle there. We started in Cana, Galilee. We're going to go back to Cana in Galilee. And Cana is the region, by the way. It's not a city. And we're going to end up at Capernaum, his home base. And there's an official's son. It just says an official in the text. So that's what we're going to talk about. A royal official's son is healed. Okay. All right. If you didn't get a sign in, there's a sign in sheet. Where'd that sign up sheet end up to? Okay, put Gary and Carol on there because they were online. There's 3 other people online on the YouTube channel. I don't know who it is though, so they didn't sign in. So if they're out there, they can put their name in the chat box or email me. Let me know you were there. The reason we do this, by the way, why do we take attendance, is because the Synod asks us. They're going to ask us how many people were in Bible class for the year, and we can either guess or we can do an educated guess by looking at these sheets. So, all right, let's close with prayer. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for Jesus. We're also thankful for Mary, who knew where to go when there was an issue, a problem, a challenge to overcome. She didn't take control, she just gave it to the one whom she knew could control it. Help us to do that all the time, Lord. No matter what the problem is, it doesn't start a marriage that's breaking down, parenting that becomes so frustrating.